Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we are back at it after a small hiatus with something brand new. Something new, which is, to be honest, something we haven't really done a lot of the times during the off season. We kind of do the same ideas, not recycle, but kind of, every year do our top rankings, the draft stuff, the positional rankings. But now we are throwing something new in here that I'm really excited for. I think it's going to be really fun. And more new than anything is the fact that we are vertical. I believe
standing.
This is the first episode ever that we recorded standing. So a good little change of pace there. But really fun stuff here. Before I get into explaining it, just a few tidbits of news from the NFL camps that started this week. I believe all 32 teams have their mini camps up and running right now.
All 32 teams are active.
So nothing huge news signing wise or really any big time, big name injuries, but a couple of really sad injuries to see. Vikings cornerback Mekhi Becton, who is looking to have a promising sophomore season, tore his ACL and will be out for the year rather. I wish it was only a week, but it is a whole year, sadly. And also Cowboys defensive end Sam Williams also tore his ACL and will also be out for the entirety of the year. But going from sad news to some good news, the Packers signed their quarterback Jordan Love to a 4-year, $220 million contract.
$55 million per
making
year,
him the highest paid quarterback currently in the NFL at $55 million a year for 8 games of good play. So,
well, he played the whole season.
He played the whole season and he had 8 games of good play.
8 great games.
So we'll see. It could be good news if you're a Packers fan or good news if you're not a Packers fan. We'll see. It could really go either way.
His salary cap hit actually doesn't jump into $40 million until the last year of his contract. So it's a very team-friendly deal for the first few years. It's kind of a back-ended loaded contract, but that's because it's kind of a half-prove-it contract still too.
That's actually really intriguing they did that because right now they aren't really paying anybody. If anything, you think they'd front-load it and get that deal in the back, but
because they want to have an out if things really do go sour.
That's true.
I don't predict to see that to happen, but if things do go sour,
some people are hoping for sour. But we will move on past the news and get right into the new idea, which is predicting the rankings of each and every division in the NFL this year. So we got this cool little board here when we went to Green Bay, who has these little magnets right here that just go ahead and slap right on there and stay. So we're going to be using these magnets, and Cal and I got together last night and did all 32 teams, decided everything last night, and now we're going to be doing 4 episodes, 4 weeks in a row, where we do the 4 compass, the 4 directions of the NFL, starting with the East and then moving to North, South, and West, of course. So pretty simple idea. Like I said, we decided these together, so there was some disagreements, a little bit of and awing.
But some compromises.
But at the end of the day, we met in the middle, and we're going to kind of keep this board exactly how it is, and we'll probably do an episode at the end of the year, maybe right after the Super Bowl, where we do a little bit of a Super Bowl recap and see how close or how far off we were at the end of the day.
That'll be interesting.
So that will be a fun one. I'm already excited for that episode, and we haven't even recorded the first episode of this series. So starting off with episode 1 here, because where else would you start off? And starting with the East. Each time we will be going to the 4 AFC teams, moving 4, 3, 2, 1, and then moving to the 4 NFC teams with 4, 3, 2, 1. So pretty simple idea here. So why not just roll straight into it with none other than the last team in the AFC East rather. And the first team on the board will be none other than the New England Patriots right there with rookie Drake May at quarterback. Now this one, to be honest, this division isn't terrible. It's actually pretty damn good. We've kind of struggled with this one some of the divisions were pretty easy to put things in a row, and then some of them just all 4 teams. It's like, I don't know where to put this team. This one, luckily, only 3 teams had a question, because I think we both pretty quickly agreed that the Patriots are going to be 4 here. I really like Drake May. I think in 2 or 3 years, the Patriots are going to be fighting for this division again. Mm-hmm. But for right now, with May as a rookie, they just got to stay bottom.
There's not much talent to that roster right now. There's kind of the same coaching staff. It just is a different head coach, but still very similar coaching staff and style. So I think that maybe they surprise some teams this year in some games, but in this division with the Bills and Dolphins and Aaron Rodgers Jets, I think it's just going to be too much for that young team to overcome early on.
Yeah, new head coach, but he was their linebackers coach for the past half decade. So same coaching staff.
Same kind of coaching staff.
So now moving on to where it gets a little more interesting. People like to say the draft doesn't really start till pick 5. This episode didn't really start till the 3rd place in the AFC East. But moving on to that aforementioned Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets there at 3. So when you look at the Jets, I think that they do pretty well this year. If Rodgers can stay healthy, I think that they got a chance to push for this division. But for right now, this is just such a loaded division. I think there's 2 teams that are way better. So putting the Jets here at 3 isn't even anti-Jet, anti-Aaron Rodgers. It's more just pro-Dolphins and pro-Bills. I don't think that they're going to be able to hang in that division. They could easily shock them, but Aaron Rodgers coming off a season-ending injury, 41?
He'll be 41
coming into the season. I talk a lot of crap about Kirk Cousins being 36 and coming off of season-ending injuries. Mm-hmm. Aaron Rodgers has another half a decade of age on him and is coming off a season-ending injury. So I just got to play it safe, or we just got to play it safe. Got to get used to saying that, and got to keep the Jets at 3.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent on this roster. One major question mark is that offensive line.
Yep.
Still, it is a little bit better because there's some more veteran presence, but man, has that offensive line aged. And when you get an old offensive line, injuries are very common, which is what happened early on to the Jets last year. I'm afraid the same thing might happen to the Jets again this year. Injuries take over, and it's just too much for the Jets to overcome, and they end up in 3rd place only because the Patriots just don't win enough games to knock them down to 4th.
Yeah, certainly. So moving on, and now really where the episode starts, because of course number 2 each time is going to give away who number 1 is. But moving on to number 2 in the AFC East, we got the track team of the NFL. We have the Miami Dolphins here at number 2. Now the Dolphins are just such a wild card. I've talked about it a couple of times this year. This is just a stacked roster. It is such a good team, especially on the offensive side of the ball. When I say track team, I really mean it. I mean Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert. Literally all track stars. That's what they are. And speed killed last year for about 3/4 of the season. But they really started to show some scars. They really started to show some weak points in the armor towards the end of the year that some teams are able to take advantage of, which led to the Bills taking the number 1 spot last year as well and sneaking in towards the end. And I think that a very similar situation happens this year. If not, maybe they kind of show those holes in the army the whole year because they're found out a little bit, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I see your point there. I think this is going to be a 1-2 battle all year long between the Dolphins and the Bills, as it was most of last year. I see it being very similar this year. With, like you said, that speed that the Dolphins have, especially early on while it's still warm and still that fall weather, that speed is able to kill. But once they got into that cold weather in the December and the January months, that's where they really did start to slow down, and they lost that division because of that. And I don't know if that same thing will happen this year, but I do see them at least coming in 2nd just because, like you said, once those cold months come around, it seemed like there were some weaknesses that showed up and some injuries. Maybe that speed wasn't as powerful in the winter as it was during the fall.
Those muscles tighten up. I'm a big runner myself, and I run during the cold a lot during the transition months, and it sucks. I do not recommend it, so I don't even blame them. They gotta fall off a little bit. But of course, no shocker here. At number 1 for the AFC East in our first division topper of this series, we have the Buffalo Bills. Now the Buffalo Bills have a huge question mark for me and something that really scares me, which is their receiving corps. They lose Gabe Davis. They lose Stephon Diggs. If I'm not mistaken, they even lose Isaiah McKenzie this offseason.
I believe so.
But two guys that I really like that they pick up Mac Hollins, who I think is a little bit of an underrated signing. I don't think he's going to go out there and be a wide receiver 1 and be a star by any means, but he's a really solid wide receiver 2. He's a really good wide receiver 3 if maybe somebody else can step up and take that role. But who I think takes that wide receiver 1 role is none other than Keon Coleman, the rookie out of Florida State. I was super high on him the whole draft process. I said he should have been a number 1 pick. He almost was. I think he was 33. I think he was the first pick of the second round.
Yep, it was close.
So close. He almost was, but I think he's going to be an absolute beast. Everything he's shown in camp is he has that really good personality and the kind of personality that guys just want to play for, they want to have fun with. So that's awesome to see. And then he's also just a beast. He's got to prove it, but I think he's looked really good. And I'll let Callan talk about this more because he, of course, coined the term. But how can you lose a division when you have a guy playing hero ball?
And yes, it comes down to Josh Allen leading the Bills to the AFC East crown once again because he plays hero ball. And not only does he play hero ball, but he's got a nice 2 tight end set that I think is going to be key this year. It was Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. And I think that those two are going to have Pro Bowl type seasons. I think they're going to become a very middle of the field using team, using those tight ends in the middle of the field. Not so much deep balls like they were with Gabe Davis, although Keon Coleman can be that deep threat. So I do think that option's still there. And one nice pickup that they also got was MVS.
Ooh, there's your deep
he
guy.
Is a speedster, and man, does he have catching troubles. He's got hands of stone. But every once in a while, those two stones stick together, and they catch the ball. And it's a rare occurrence when it happens, but when it does, it's usually a big play. And I think that deep ball will still be an option, but I think that the tight ends will be the new number 1 option for the Bills, and it'll be a surprise through most of this season while the Dolphins try to catch up to them.
Yeah, a few different X factors. Also think of James Cook in the backfield there as a pro X factor. And as one more negative X factor to think of, they lose both Tre'Davious White and they lost one of their safeties, if I'm not mistaken.
Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer.
They lost them both. I can remember if they lost them both. So a huge hit to that secondary. So another question mark there. But overall, I think they take it in the long run. So now moving on to our first NFC team of the series and our 4th spot in the NFC East. Another pretty obvious one in the long run. We have none other than the New York Giants. And more than anything, the New York Giants without Saquon Barkley. You pay Daniel Jones last year, and he doesn't really show you much. In fact, he's injured for most of the season. Tommy DeVito is in and out all year, just really shaking things up. And they were still able to actually win some games and pull off some big plays solely on the back of Saquon Barkley. So now you take that big bright spot of last year, and you move it to a division rival in the Philadelphia Eagles. And what do you get? You get another 4th place finish. I don't know what it was that one year, if it was just the hype of having a new coach, but when they came in, they made it to the playoffs. They beat the Vikings as a 6 over a 3 seed. It was the craziest thing ever, Brian Daboll's first year. But it has just really been all downhill since that. I know this is only the 3rd season of him now, and that was his first season, so it was only a year ago, technically, 2 years ago. But it has been downhill fast since then, and I don't think that downhill momentum stops.
No, and even though there is nice coaching there with Daboll, I think that it's just been shown that Daniel Jones is not an NFL starting quarterback. He's too injury prone. He's inaccurate. His best trait is that he's a scrambler and that he's fast. But he gets tripped up by the turf monster all the time. So even that fails for him. So, it's hard to really put the Giants any higher in this division. Maybe talk about 3rd with Washington, depending on how well they do. We'll talk about why we think they're 3rd here in a little bit. But I think that with them losing Saquon, Daniel Jones coming off of a terrible torn ACL, that's just going to be way too much for this team to overcome. Malik Neighbors, I think, will be a nice bright spot, but I think that he'll be the best of a bad situation there in New York.
Certainly.
What a fall for grace for these two. Former Super Bowl competitors.
That's exactly. Look at the classic Eli Manning, Tom Brady story. And now they're both at the bottom of their division. I was just thinking that. I think Neighbors will definitely be a bright spot. My kind of bright spot of their down year, that edge rush with Kayvon Thibodeau and newly acquired Brian Burns.
That'll be true. They will have quite the defense.
That will be fun to watch, to say the least. And they will need to be probably tackling the running back more than the quarterback, sadly. But
they're going to be this year's Hawkeyes.
Yeah, literally. So now moving on, as Callan mentioned, we have the Washington Commanders. Possibly could become the Washington Redskins again. I doubt it, but I've seen rumors. There's certainly talk. But for now, they're still the Washington Commanders. And this was a tough one. It was all I could do to not put the Washington, or both of us really. It's all we could do to not put the Washington Commanders a little higher. They got a great receiving corps. I truly think that they're going to get Brandon Ayuk. Has it happened yet? No, of course. Will it happen? Probably not, because I think it will. But I truly do think it happens. My money is on that on the roulette table big time. But overall, I just think this is a really good team. They got a really solid and young defense. But the only reason you had to keep him third here, in my opinion, is just because of Jaden Daniels. I don't think he's going to be terrible by any means, but just this is a really good division with two really good teams in front of them. It's so hard to justify moving a rookie quarterback up more than 3. I think it's a very similar situation to the Patriots with Drake May, where in a year or two, this could be a really good team fighting for the division. But for now, as a rookie, they just got to stay low.
Right. You're throwing a rookie into the fire here. He's most likely going to be their starting quarterback to go into the season. He may have been the most pro-ready of the group, but that doesn't mean he's really ready. Because until you get that NFL taste, you're never really ready for it. And I think because of that, they do better than the Giants. And I think the Giants lose a lot of games this year. And I think Washington surprises some teams. Maybe a 5-6 win team, get them to that third place spot. I think they, push into they could push that second place team early on, but I think that it's top heavy. We talked about the AFC East being top heavy. The NFC East is really a 1-2 race when you break it down. Yeah. So I think they don't really push those teams late into the season, but with Washington, look next year to be their year.
Yeah, I could see it. Something really crazy I just realized. Jaden Daniels, I don't know why I keep saying Jaden. Jaden Daniels, I'm pretty sure is the same age as Daniel Jones and Jalen Hurts, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
Which is absolutely insane to think about.
Daniels started at Arizona State.
Correct.
That's right, because he played with Brandon
That's
Ayuk.
why I think they're going to get Brandon Ayuk, is because he literally played with Brandon Ayuk, a receiver taken in the 2020 draft class, which is just insane to think about. But, that's just how it goes sometimes. Each one takes their own path. Let's see if it's successful.
Yeah.
So now, finally, moving on to that 2-1 spot, that 1-2 race that we're talking about. For this year, at our number 2, we have the Philadelphia Eagles taking that second fiddle this year. Now, they just picked up Saquon Barkley, which I talked about earlier, which is such a huge pickup. The man is an absolute beast. They didn't really lose anybody other than Jason Kelce, maybe a few defensive guys that I'm missing. But you look at that and you say, they did so well last year, and now they pick up a beast in Saquon Barkley. How can you put them at 2? How can you say that they don't push the Cowboys out? And it's just because the regular season Cowboys are a different beast. I think that the Philadelphia Eagles are, I don't want to say guaranteed playoff team, because they really fell off towards the end of last year. I don't know what it was exactly, but they just clearly started struggling a little bit come playoff time. They barely even made the playoffs and then got outed by the Bucks round 1, if I'm not mistaken.
Baker Mayfield.
So I don't want to say it's guaranteed, but I think when you already have as talented a roster as they do, and you pick up a guy like Saquon Barkley, I don't know how you don't make the playoffs. Maybe if losing Jason Kelce just puts a dagger in the heart of that offensive line, which of course it will, but they have the guys behind him. They have the Landon Dickerson to step up and take it, the Cam Jurgens who they got out of Nebraska last year. They can fill that spot talent-wise. Can you fill it leadership-wise? That's a different question. That could be an X factor there. But for now, they're a playoff team in my eyes, but number 2 in their division.
Definitely one of the better teams in the NFL right now, with that wide receiving corps of Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, and can't forget about Devontae Parker, their new pickup. But with that receiving corps, that's definitely a talented, explosive offense. I think that they definitely win a lot of games to where they are probably more than likely going to be one of the playoff teams. Where they fall in the playoff wild card rankings, we'll have to see. But one thing that worries me, and I think is going to be their Achilles heel this year, is that defensive backfield. Because even though they did draft Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, Darius Slay and James Bradbury are another year older. They're playing on contract years, and they kind of started to falter there down at the end, towards the end of the season. And I think age started to catch up with them early on last season. And I think that could happen again. And if it does, look for the Eagles to be in a lot of shootouts this year. Looking at 42-45 kind of games.
Definitely. We looked it up last night, unless I'm misremembering. I think Darius Slay's already gone, actually.
No, he's still there.
He is? Okay.
We looked it up. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So they still got them, but definitely aging, like you said. And who knows how the rookies come in, especially a guy like Quinyon Mitchell, who is definitely high upside, but a little bit of a project cornerback. But I love that they have two Devontaes now. They don't have Devontae, they have Duo Vontae. That's their receiving course this year. But now, of course, no shocker here. Our number one is the Dallas Cowboys. And like I mentioned, they are a regular season team. When history repeats itself this many times, it's not a trend. It's just truly what happens. It's what's in their blood. They're going to go, they're 12-4, 13-5, whatever you want to say for regular season. 13-4, I should say.
13-4,
yeah,
12-5.
Whatever you want to say for the regular season, that's, they're just good. At home, they're so good. And during the regular season, they're so good. They falter during the playoffs, but we're not looking at the playoffs right now. We're looking at who's going to win the division. So at the end of the day, there is just so much talent on this roster. They haven't paid Dak yet, but if I am remembering correctly, they do extend CD Lamb. They give him the money that he wants. Their defense with Micah Parsons on it is just a one-man wrecking crew. I mean, your defense can be pretty bad, but if you have a guy like Micah Parsons, he just brings up the team around him. The way he pressures the quarterback helps the secondary. The way he helps with the run game helps the linebackers. The way he takes double teams helps the defensive line. He just brings up the defense by himself. And not to mention, they don't have a very bad defense around him. They actually have a pretty damn stellar defense around him. So overall, just a really good defense that can carry them through games and carry them through close games more than anything. And an offense that's just explosive enough to keep them in those close games and give them the wins.
Yeah, they'll get a lot of regular season wins because they're a regular season juggernaut. And Dak's performing on a contract year where he's trying to become the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And then they also have to pay CD Lamb and Micah Parsons. And it's not likely they're going to be able to pay all three. And it looks like Dak is actually going to be the odd man out. Because let's not forget, they have Trey Lance sitting there on the bench.
They do.
Trey Lance has just been sitting there absorbing all this and waiting for his chance again to show that he belongs in the NFL because he's had such a small sample size. It's hard to really tell with him. But I digress a little bit there. I think that this will be a regular season juggernaut, not only because of that wide receivers with CD Lamb and Michael Gallup, but also those corners that I just mentioned with Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland, who just both, I think they consecutively set the pick six records, did they not?
Well, Trayvon Diggs was the pick record.
And that's what it was.
And then Bland was the pick six record.
That's what it was. I knew it was something like that.
Covering all the bases.
Yeah, so I think that defense is going to be stellar, and that's going to be the key to how well they really do this year is how well those corners do. And as long as they can stay healthy, I could see them shutting down some of the most explosive offenses because those corners are so dominant and aggressive, but they do get beat every once in a while because of that aggressiveness. So we'll see, but I think that they're going to be the key on defense because there's not much pass rush from the Cowboys. They have Micah Parsons, who's just a do-it-all defensive player, but as far as their pass rush, I can't really think of anybody besides DeMarcus Lawrence that's their star
and
pass
especially now
rusher.
that they just lost Sam Williams now.
Yes, who was their young and up-and-comer.
Both of their deep tackles are like true kind of big body run
stopper
stopper
run
guys.
Stuffers. So we'll have to see how well those corners play without a real strong pass rush. But if they can play well, I expect the Cowboys to take the NFC East once again and venture into the playoffs to see how well they can do there. But we'll see how they do when we get to that point.
Yeah, definitely. It's a whole different ball game in the postseason. But I like it. Give Lance a chance. I mean,
Give
that
Lance
guy,
a chance.
they take him 3rd overall in San Francisco, and he literally got like a game and a half before he was injured, and then he just like never really touched
And
the
then
field
Brock
again.
Purdy showed up.
It was the craziest thing ever. So I'd like to see him get a chance somewhere. Do I think he'll take it and run with it? No, probably not actually, but I'd like to see him get another
If it's
chance.
anywhere, Dallas is a nice situation. You got a pretty
definitely.
solid offensive line. And running game's kind of old. You bring back Zeke, but you got nice pass catchers, a solid tight end, and Jake Ferguson. It'd be a decent place for him to at least restart his career.
Yeah, certainly. I'd love to see it. So that was episode 1 of this series. We'll probably have a few tweaks with the camera, and I'll take a picture of this because I don't know how clear it's going to be on the camera and just kind of pop it up right now just so you can easily see the whole screen. But other than that, we're going to kind of watch this episode and play it by ear. So excited for this series. So excited to do something new. Make sure you stay tuned in until next week when we will be, of course, covering the AFC and NFC North, which is probably my favorite one to pick out of this whole episode.
Yep.
Not just because that's where our teams are, but they're 2 really fun divisions to look at this year. So, of course, come back next week when we do that. But until then, don't forget
To eat the W.